Commerce. And I just want to say thank you so much for all of you for being in the room with us today. I want to let you know about a couple of upcoming events before we get started. The first is the Business Showcase. That's happening on April 13th, and if you'd like to reserve a booth, please contact the Chamber for that. And then the application deadline for Leadership Greater Concord, which is a leadership program in our area, that is May 1st. You can register or apply for that at concordnhchamber.com. And we would like to thank Marshall's Florist for the table decorations, and we would like to extend a thank you to our sponsor, Lincoln Financial, and I would like to introduce Marlene Hammond. Thank you.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for this opportunity. As mentioned, my name is Marlene Hammond. I'm an Assistant Vice President at Lincoln Financial here in New Hampshire. I'm honored to be here today as a representative of Lincoln, who has grown up and lived her entire life in this great state. Thank you. And in honor of Women's History Month, I do want to share a milestone that occurred at Lincoln Financial Group. Ellen Cooper was named CEO-elect in 2021 and assumed the role of President and CEO in May of 2022. For those who don't know, Ellen is the first woman and 10th President of Lincoln Financial in its 118-year history. We're fortunate and proud to be serving under this great leader. And while that's one reason that makes me proud to work for Lincoln, there are several more. And one is our commitment to our communities. Lincoln prides itself on being connected to our community. And though our brick and mortar in Concord no longer exists, our staff's presence and dedication to the community remains strong in this state. A letter from Ellen Cooper, our president, on corporate responsibility. At Lincoln, our purpose as an organization is reflected in everything we do. Since our founding in 1905, we've focused on building a better world and a greater financial security and opportunity for all. This deep commitment to financial well-being and to developing strong communities is underscored by our philanthropic efforts. Through the work of our corporate foundation and the remarkable efforts of our 11,000 employees, we're supported to communities where our people live, work, and helping them build a stronger tomorrow. In 2021, we all continued to adjust to the new normal. Our teams listened, learned, and adapted as we fortified our strong company culture, delivered on promises to our customers, and supported the community needs in new and meaningful ways. In these changing times, we empowered our people to try new things and to innovate in the work we do as a responsible company. And we've all grown together and achieved remarkable outcomes in this new hybrid world. And to name a few things we've done, our foundation made contributions to more than 285 nonprofit partners, totaling more than $9.5 million, providing services to 1.2 million people in need across the country. We amplified our commitment to the environment by continuing to reduce greenhouse gas emissions, increasing our use of digital documentation, and holding ourselves to an accountable, ambitious goals and benchmarks. We continue to build on our commitment to diversity, equity, and inclusion through our Racial Justice Action Plan, expanding on minority representation across the company with a focus on leadership. At Lincoln, we empower our people to do the right thing, to uphold responsible business practices, and to support our communities and one another. And here in New Hampshire, we have supported many impactful nonprofits, including the New Hampshire Food Program, the Concord Coalition to End Homelessness, Grafton County Senior Citizens, Easter Seals, Catch, Capital Center for the Arts, the Campus Compact for New Hampshire, the Boys and Girls Club of Central New Hampshire, the Currier Museum of Art, Concord Family YMCA, just to name some. So Lincoln employees are committed to community impact, service, and responsibility across our great state, which is why I'm here today to be honored representing my company and to introduce our great governor. Before I give his bio, I do want to give a slight personal note of how I've run into the governor before. So I've run into him a couple of times down at our farmers market right beside the Capitol building when he's come to visit us. But most importantly, I've run into him, I think, a few times selling him ice cream from the 4-H program's ice cream booth at New Hampshire's Farm and Forest Expo. Okay, so Governor Chris Sununu is our 82nd governor of the state of New Hampshire and is currently serving his 4th term. In 2020, he received more votes than any other candidate in state history. With Governor Sununu's leadership, New Hampshire is ranked the #1 state in the country for personal freedoms by the Cato Institute. Named the nation's most fiscally responsible governor by the Cato Institute, Governor Sununu has delivered 3 balanced state budgets with no new taxes. And I think that deserves a clap. In fact, his 3rd budget cuts and phases out the interest and dividend tax for retirees, provides tax relief to employers and small businesses, reduces property taxes by $100 million, delivers voluntary paid family medical leave, and spends more money per pupil for public education than ever before. In the wake of COVID-19 pandemic, Governor Sununu took an unprecedented action to balance the health and safety of the Granite Staters with keeping with the state's economy strong. New Hampshire always ranked among the safest states for COVID. Today, the Granite State is the fastest growing state in the Northeast, has one of the lowest unemployment rates in the nation, and the lowest child poverty rates of any other state in America. Early in his tenure, Governor Sununu created the Doorway and the Recovery Friendly Workplace Initiative, both of which have become national models for prevention, treatment, and recovery from substance use disorder, and consistently improving results of citizens of New Hampshire. According to the CDC, New Hampshire in 2021 was one of just 4 states to reduce the drug overdose deaths. Chris grew up in Salem, New Hampshire. He graduated from Massachusetts Institute of Technology with a BS in Civil and Environmental Engineering as an environmental engineer. Chris worked for 10 years cleaning up the hazardous waste sites across the country. In 1998, Chris completed a 5-month through hike of the Appalachian Trail from Maine to Georgia. Yes, he's strong. And finally, Governor Sununu lives in Newfields with his wife Valerie and his 3 children. Thank you, Governor. Please join me.
Well, thank you very much. That was quite an introduction. I feel like I just have to come up and drop the mic and walk off. No, that was great, and I love that the biggest cheer was for hiking and tax cuts. Right? That is very New Hampshire. And it's always great to see someone born and raised in New Hampshire. As I always say, if you're born here, you're lucky, and if you moved here, you're smart. So it's a win for everybody kind of involved. I thought what I would do is just kind of give, it's a state of the state. Where are we? What's going on? Happy to talk about anything you guys want. So if you think of questions, I'll maybe do 10 or 15 minutes, and then think of questions. Hit me with absolutely anything you want, whether it's New Hampshire-based, national, whatever. I used to try to do this thing where I was like, let's try to keep the questions to New Hampshire, and I get questions about everything. So it's totally fine. I'm an open book. If I have a good answer, I will give it to you. And if I don't, as a good politician, I will make one up. And then I'll let the press correct me later. We really try to be an open book and try to come with, again, I try to spend a lot of time getting into the details of things. I mean, understanding how systems work. If you understand how they work, then when something isn't working, you can really go to the heart of the problem as opposed to saying, well, we just need more money or we just need more of this. You have to figure out what isn't working, where the system breaks down. And you always have to approach government with the sense that, look, whoever created these systems originally had the best intentions, whether it was Republicans or Democrats or the left wing or the conservatives. Everyone has the best intentions, but sometimes the other variables change, dynamics change. The opioid crisis is a great example of that, where a lot of our previous systems, when I became governor, the system of treatment, the system of recovery, those had basically been in place for 40 years. They were antiquated, they weren't addressing fentanyl, they weren't designed to the issue of the day, they weren't flexible. It was basically just a grab-all for nonprofits. They all just wanted more money for their system. And these are great nonprofits with great people, but again, we had to change the paradigm a little bit. And again, it took a little while to really figure out exactly how these things work, where the barriers were. And by the way, we don't know where the barriers are. You do. right? The citizens do. When a mom comes and tells you that the system failed because she couldn't get mental health services for her daughter, okay, that's the person you want to talk to about where it failed. Where the communication failed, where weren't there entry points, were the schools involved, was the community involved, was it just a one-stop system? Were they in a rural area and they had to drive 200 miles to get better service? Where did it break down? It's that mom that is going to tell you where that system failed, or that individual. So we at the State House, I try to remind folks all the time, we don't always have the best ideas, but we're the implementer, right? We're the tools to get stuff done, to change those systems, and really, again, try to focus on how they work. Now, I have 400 legislators over there, as you all know. I'm reminded every day of it, frankly. It's 201 to 199, which is just really cool, frankly. It's a headache, don't get me wrong, but it is a really divided legislature, which isn't a bad thing. It's an amazing opportunity, actually. Now, we always get stuff done. I've had Republican-driven legislatures. I've had fully Democrat legislators, as I did in my second term. We always get stuff done, which is, I think, a really good sign and a really good marker, if you will, of the state of this state, the state of politics, the state of government in this state, especially in relation to what we're seeing with the rest of the country. Washington, it's a joke. The other 49 states, they really do look at New Hampshire and go, how are you guys doing this? Right? How is it that you are 201 to 199 and you got a Speaker of the House on the first ballot? Which I remind Kevin McCarthy all the time. He's a good guy. Kevin's actually a really good guy. And he's trying hard. He is actually really trying to work across the aisle on a lot of things. But I do tease him about the whole 15 ballot ordeal that he put himself through, frankly. And it's great. I love the introduction because it is great to, we are number one. We're not just like pretty good. We are literally number one in a lot of these amazing, amazing areas. And today, for the 7th straight year of my term as governor, we were ranked what I think is the best number one ranking, and I'm very serious in this, the number one ranking I'm most proud of, which is the most efficient government in the country. The best programs for the dollars put into the system. Because for me, as an engineer, as someone who wants to be fiscally responsible but just always fighting for better results, that's it, right? We just you guys get the biggest bang for your buck in terms of tax dollars, and we hold ourselves to a very high standard that way, right? So, folks ask me all the time, I travel the country, as you may have seen. I'm doing a lot of that lately. I'm doing a lot of press, which is pretty fun because I get to go out and brag about New Hampshire. I get to brag about this great system we have, and it isn't the governor, it's the community-driven system, the local control system that really is at the core, if you will, and drives a lot of our foundational success as a state. It isn't the politics. It isn't who's sitting in the State House. The fact that we have this amazingly powerful thing that we all just experienced called town meeting. Sounds kind of corny, if you will, to other folks around the country, but I brag about it in that at its core, it encourages and really empowers more voter participation on a local level. It encourages and empowers individuals to have much more say on their tax dollars. I have no say on your property taxes, right? You do. I have no say on what happens at the local level. You do. And that's where most of the most impactful decisions for you or your family or your business are really happening. And we empower that. We don't have a top-down big government, just do as we say type system. So town meeting at its core gets everybody involved. It forces you, if you so choose, to go debate an issue at a local level with your friends and your neighbors, and many times those folks aren't on your side, and most of the time you have to be wait at the school bus stop with your kids together the next morning, right? So it forces you to be a little more collegial and not take things as personally and understand that it's a tough dynamic. Same with the school boards. Most of our school decisions are made at a local level, not at a state level. They should not be necessarily. We provide a foundation and a structure at the state level, but you got to let school boards do what they're going to do. Do I agree with every school board in the state? Hell no. No way. But we have a system. If the citizens of that town don't like that school board, who are making decisions that directly impact those citizens, those voters, they're going to fire them the next year, right? They'll bring new people in. So that's a great system of accountability. I might not agree with the final decision, but the voter is a lot smarter than I am. The voter is smarter than the legislature. The voter knows. And it goes back to this kind of free market approach I take to a lot of different things, right? You let the free market reign. You get government out of business's way. You let competition thrive. That's why we have such a strong economy here, because when in doubt, I say take a step back. in terms of government. Now, you got to provide the right guidelines and health and safety rules. Obviously, there's a place for government. We all know that. Basic services and encouraging the nonprofits to be part of whether it's mental health and or recovery and all these different programs that we need out there. But at its core, if the economy is doing well, then government does well, right? If businesses want to be here, I can keep cutting these taxes for businesses. Democrats criticize, oh, you're just cutting more taxes for businesses. Damn right I am. Because they keep people employed. They invest in their employees. They are the reason we have some of the highest wages in the country, right? And that's why we're so successful, because we have high wages here, not because the government says so. We don't have a minimum wage law here, because we let businesses compete, and they want the best and the brightest, and so they make their investments in their employees and in their equipment and in their business, and everything thrives. More businesses want to be here, we cut taxes, but we actually have more revenue than ever before. That model really, really does work. As soon as you start going in the opposite direction, we lose that New Hampshire advantage. We become just like everybody else. We're not the place everybody wants to be. Now, where are they coming? Someone asked me earlier, well, where are they all coming from? Well, a lot from Massachusetts still, of course. And that's great. The folks in Massachusetts, for the most part, usually grew up in Massachusetts. They get the live free or die thing. They know what we're about. They know the opportunities that we've created here, and they're coming up for the right reasons. It's those... It's the ones from New York and New Jersey I can sometimes deal with. Just kidding. I'm just kidding. I'm sure that'll be the headline on MUR tonight. Sununu takes apart New York. Join the club. Get a ticket and get in line for that one, right? But I remind them, look, regardless of whether you're Republican or Democrat, remember why you came. Remember what live free or die it is. You've heard me say this, I think, at this event every year. It is not 4 words on a license plate, right? It is so much more. At its core, it is limited government, local control, low taxes, individual responsibility. These are the foundations of our success as a state. And from that, the systems come. From that, the opportunities come. And that's what government is for, opportunity. I'm not here to solve your problems. If you think government is here to solve your problems, holy cow, are you misled. I'm here to create doors of opportunity for you and your family and your business, as many doors as possible. And then you figure out what door is best for you. What door is best for the education of your child? It ain't for me to say. It ain't for the government to say. It's for you to figure out. And we create as many doors of opportunity so you have some choices. So you can figure out where the needs are, where the system isn't working, or where it is working really well, and you can charge through that door with your child and get, again, the most opportunity for them going forward. Or your business. My job isn't to tell you how to run your business or provide more, insist on more guidelines on your business or whatever it is, and more rules and obligations and taxes. My job is to say, you know what's best. You're a cabinet maker in Warren, New Hampshire. I don't know what your employees need. I don't know what you need for materials and supplies. I don't know what your transportation dynamics are, your logistics problems, your whatever it is. So why should I force more stuff on you when you're just trying to make sure you can sell a product? And you're the one creating that opportunity for those families in terms of jobs and financial opportunity. And as I said before, with financial opportunity, everything else kind of gets created from that. So I do like ice cream. Yeah. It's one thing Joe Biden and I really have in common. It is not a rare thing to find Chris Sununu putting a chocolate chip cookie or an ice cream cone in his face. It's part of our economy. I'm just trying to help the economy, trying to promote craft breweries. Love the craft breweries. I don't know if I've been to every one yet. I still got a few to knock out. But I'm gonna, we're gonna enjoy the product. It's a great product. We have our niche here in New Hampshire, which is great. So did you guys see it was free ice cream cone day at Dairy Queen yesterday? Now, I'm normally not one for the large chains, right? But in the winter, for those who don't know, we have one of the most I'm not reading a speech now. I'm just going. This is one of my many off-tangent stories. So in the winter, do you know we have the most successful, the most profitable Dairy Queen in America is in Manchester. It's amazingly well run by a gentleman and his dad have owned it for years and years. It's a family business. They do great. And yesterday was free ice cream cone day. So I thought, I'll go by and say hi to the gang there. I know the employees. We'll just stop in. There were like 10,000 people hoarding, clogging the streets of Manchester. So I get home last night, and because everyone, like my cell phone is not some government secret. It's like all over the internet. So I have a whole bunch of texts. Hey, Governor, there are massive traffic jams all over Manchester. What are you doing to fix this problem? And I don't think people realized it was free ice cream cone day in Manchester. But it was, I mean, it was crazy. And I just expect, don't worry, enjoy your ice cream cone. It'll clear out by morning because, you know. Anyway, so look, a couple things. Let's talk about the budget a little bit, like what we've proposed. Talk about some of the issues. We can talk about opioids or healthcare or mental health. These are the things that I'm kind of focusing on, housing. But there's obviously lots of issues and a lot of specific issues to Concord as well. So we can talk about kind of whatever you want there. So let's talk about my budget in general. So again, the benefit of what was going on now is nothing too extreme is going to pass on either side. That's a good thing, right? So a lot of that stuff just immediately gets thrown out. It goes out of committee. Most of the committees we have now are even, Republican, Democrat. I have breakfast. I did one this morning with the various committees. I bring them in. I can't meet with 400 reps. I mean, I don't have, no one has enough time to do 400 individual meetings. But I do breakfast with the committees. And if they want to come in and chat, they can. And so Republicans and Democrats come in and they'll just tell me what's on their mind or what they're seeing or ask me my thoughts on a particular bill. So we try to maintain as much communication and transparency, if you will, in that process. Knowing that nothing too crazy was going to pass, knowing that we actually are very financially stable, revenues will drop a little bit over the coming years, but not by much. But we are going to anticipate they go down a little bit. But because of all these other efficiencies we create in the system, there's still a lot of opportunity to spend and create programs and invest. Big one is education, right? So we've built up, because the legislature tends to, for years, kind of gets locked up, no one wants to address this education formula problem. But the education formula stinks. I mean, it's just broken. It's antiquated. It's 15 years old. Do you know we still use data? We still use data to provide grants to schools based on their enrollments from 2006. Think about that. We look at what the enrollment was almost 20 years ago and say, well, based on that enrollment, this is what you should get for a grant. It's crazy, right? And the legislature always talks about undoing it, but they never really get there. So I went really hard in my budget. I challenged ourselves, and we've done a couple things. We've created a bit of a surplus in our trust fund for our education trust fund for a couple different reasons. But that really provides the opportunity in terms of raising the base rate of education. The formula is so complicated, I won't bore you with the whole thing. The base rate, the dollars per child we give to every school. The rate for free and reduced lunch, that can go up in my budget, it does. The amount that we're giving for what we call stabilization grants, making sure no school loses money anytime soon. It accounts now for an inflationary. Every year the number will just kind of keep going up, so we don't have to keep tackling the formula, or I should say not tackling the formula year over year, and you get this discrepancy within the system. It allows for more money for education freedom accounts. It allows for more money for charter schools. It allows for a huge surplus of using that, a very large surplus for school building aid, which I think is huge. So again, if you don't have a quality physical school, it ain't going to work. And a lot of smaller communities especially are sometimes left behind in the school building aid opportunity. We haven't done as much there as we should. So it gives a little bit to the left and it gives a little bit to the right, and everybody gets a little something. And my sense is they'll adjust the numbers a little bit, but I think we're going to have a fundamentally different and much better school building formula. And it says we're going to use today's data. Now, and slowly over time, we're going to have to make adjustments. Now, why do we use the data from so long ago? Because nobody ever had the courage to say, well, that school, as student enrollment goes down, which it does, about 3% a year in this state, right? Now, we have more young families moving in than ever before. That's really great. But right now, school enrollment is slowly dropping in New Hampshire. That's a tough fact that you have to handle. But we don't just cut schools off. We let them kind of roll out a little bit. We give them a glide path. But there are some schools that are getting funded as if they have literally 30% more kids than they actually have. That's a problem. So we just have to make those adjustments and update the formula. And I'm pretty happy that I think everybody gets a little something, and it seems like we're gonna get there. I really push a lot on licensure, and this is the controversial one, and I knew it would be licensure and regulatory reform. So we have 250,000 people in the state can work because they have a license that they have to pay for at the state level. There's I think 54 different boards. There are hundreds and hundreds of actual different licenses, within those boards, and then hundreds of thousands of people that actually have those licenses. So we said, well, I started looking at this, and we have a hawkers and peddlers license. It's dumb. It's just dumb. It's not needed. We have an itinerant license. You know what that is? You need a license to go sell things door to door. So technically every Girl Scout is breaking the law. Come on, what are we doing here, right? So we're just trying to get, I think that was put in like the 50s, right? When they're selling encyclopedias and vacuums and whatever it was. So it's like we're trying to modernize. Now, no one ever wants to touch licensing because everyone has a barber, everyone has someone at the salon that they know, and they're going to go in and tell the legislature, well, don't change my license, just change theirs. Or don't change the engineering license, don't change this license. Look, they're all antiquated. They all need some updating. We have boards that have gotten so big because everyone wants to add another person to their board that but some of these boards can't get a quorum. If you can't get a quorum, you can't review the applications to get people more licenses. So the whole system tends to get jammed up and break down. We have some boards that oversee like a dozen licenses in the state, right? The radiological board and things like that, they're really rare. So there's got to be ways to consolidate. So we're just trying to simplify the system. Now, it's pretty controversial because everybody wants to protect their fiefdom, right? The Real Estate Appraisers Board is like, oh, no, don't touch us. You need a license from the state to sell real estate. I'm not sure why, but apparently you do. We have a lot of boards and licenses that you can get nationally. And we basically ask you to take the same test and apply the same way as you would nationally, but you just have to duplicate that at the state level. Well, then why are we doing that? Why don't you just, everyone has the national license? Well, let's just use that. Why do we need this redundancy and this protectionism? So what's the point of all this? It simplifies government, but more importantly, it now allows the reciprocity. If you have gotten a license in Massachusetts for X, and it's substantially the same process you'd go through New Hampshire, you should get reciprocity on day one. Why am I making you go through the exact same hoops with all the experience you have if for the most part, we will compare that process in a place like Massachusetts, for example. But why, if you're good enough for Massachusetts, why do you have to pass the exact same test and pay the same fees as here? Immediate reciprocity with licenses. We don't have enough social workers. We need more social workers, and I want reciprocity there. We don't have enough nurses. Why should a nurse be waiting 6 months because they want to move from Massachusetts to New Hampshire, but they're not going to do it because they can't get their license for 6 months to a year? That's wrong, right? That's a very old way of thinking of things. It's very protectionist. We need workforce. Everybody needs workforce, and we can jump miles ahead in terms of the opportunity, especially around New England, to bringing that workforce in by kind of revamping this. I know it's controversial. Half the room thinks it's a great idea. The other half wants to come at me with pitchforks, but it's fundamentally the right thing to do. So the other big things, and I'll go pretty quick here and then we can open for questions, the mental health stuff is huge. We've made huge, not just huge investments, but transformational changes in our system around mental health over the last 4 or 5 years. My focus is always on kids. If the investment you make, and this is how I've got a lot of it done with more, I'll say, stronger conservatives who traditionally don't understand the value and the return proposition in making investments in areas like this, I've been able to show them, look, when you make big investments around mental health in kids, right? You talk about the opportunity for social emotional learning within the classroom, making sure there's that access of opportunity. Something as simple as putting the mental health and suicide awareness hotline on the back of every student ID in New Hampshire. That simple little thing that we passed last year is transformational, because what we found so many times, where does the system break down? Someone is having their kid is having a mental health crisis at 2 in the morning, right? There's something going on. They don't know what to do. They don't know where to turn. It's really a point of crisis. And yeah, you call the police or something like that, depending on the nature of the situation. You run to the emergency room. But now we have the phone number. That phone number, that one-stop shop, really good 24-hour access phone number is in everybody's home. And everyone knows that they can just turn over a student ID, call that number for their kid, for their spouse, for their family member, for their neighbor, whoever. So it's about access points. We have great systems, but if folks don't know where to turn in that moment of crisis. So creating those opportunities and those access points. The fact that we have emergency response teams in mental health that will go anywhere in the state now. We didn't have that a few years ago. We have those teams now. 24/7 will go anywhere in the state, to deal with a mental health crisis. So again, most of the time dealing with that type of crisis in your community and in your home is 1,000 times better than having to go to an emergency room or New Hampshire hospital, whatever it might be. So those teams can, again, kind of emergency respond. We never had that before. We need more beds. We need more DRF beds. We need more staff. Everybody knows that that's a constant issue. Whether you're running a hardware store or you're running a mental health system, we need more staff. We need more social workers, not just psychiatrists, but the social workers are really important. Do you know you cannot be discharged right now, and I'm trying to change the law, but you cannot be discharged from New Hampshire Hospital, that's our mental health hospital right here in town, unless you kind of get this buy-off from one of these social workers that's certified to do it. We have folks in New Hampshire Hospital right now that should be discharged, but we have nowhere to discharge them. It's crazy. We have a lack of housing, which is why I'm so adamant about creating more housing. We have a lack of the transitional housing, what we call PRTF housing, and we're building more kind of that transitional stage for folks. But if you can get them into that transition, the bed opens up, right? That for those really acute, long-term, cases that need more internal care, where someone does have to spend the night, maybe it's for a week or a couple weeks or whatever it might be. But we have folks that, unfortunately, that New Hampshire Hospital is almost like an apartment for some of them, because we're having so much trouble getting them out of the system. So I need more social workers. I need more flexibility with the rules so we can move them on, because they want to get back to their communities. But there's just these antiquated rules that are in the way there. So it's not just, hey, you need more staff, you need more beds. We got the beds, and in some cases we have the staff, but we don't have the certain type of staff to open that up on the way out. So again, understanding where all these processes can break down is so critical. I get into the weeds of this. I don't know if I can tell you, most governors are really good, but they don't get into the weeds of the system design. But when you do, you create so much more efficiency when you go after these problems. Housing's a big one. That's another big thing. I don't know what they're going to do. They cut some of my housing money this morning out of the House. I'm going to jam it back in through the Senate, I think. My big issue on housing, I think, as a lot of folks know, is everyone has to participate. Affordable housing is not an issue for Manchester. It's not an issue for Concord. It is an issue for 220 cities and towns. And it drives me nuts. And I will challenge any planning board or any town selectman who says they don't want that housing in their town. Then you don't want to be part of the solution that New Hampshire needs as a whole. There are businesses in your town, virtually every business in your town would love to have more affordable housing, more affordable units, more affordable multifamily units in their town for their employees. If you're not supporting housing, then you're not supporting local business. If you're not supporting local business, then your tax base is going to suffer. Your community is going to suffer. Everybody needs to be a part of it. I created Invest NH to create a lot more money for developers, so they could either help offset some of the inflationary costs, the crazy inflation. A $10 million project turns to a $12 million project, all of a sudden the project doesn't go. So Invest NH can help provide some of that, some of those funds on the back end. But then over here, we have a whole nother grant program which incentivizes towns. We'll pay towns $10,000 per unit that they approve. The fastest one approve it gets the money to offset the town's cost and financial risk and all of that. And we can debate whether that's real. It's just very old school thinking. Concord does a great job with it, actually. A very good job. And is Jim here? Where's the mayor? Uh-oh. Jim didn't show up. Trouble. No, Jim does, Mayor Brule does a terrific job here in Concord. He really, really does. He's on the ground, and I give him a lot of credit. We have our disagreements from time to time, but he really is on the ground here. I think he does a good job, and as a whole, this community's done a great job. But Concord needs Warner. And I shouldn't pick on Warner because they're doing a good housing project, but they need the Walpoles and the Warners and the Pittsburghs and the Newfields, whoever it is. Even if it's just a few, we're just going to do 4 units here. It doesn't need to be a 100-person apartment building, right? It can just be a few units here and a few units there. That just makes everyone's life a little more flexible and easy. And it's the number one barrier we have to. I can't bring more workforce in for your businesses if I have no place for them to live, right? So that's the opportunity. And if you build an apartment building, it'll be sold out before you put a shovel in the ground. I can guarantee you that at a really good price. I'm going to touch on one thing that isn't really New Hampshire driven. And then I'll shut up and I'm happy to take comments or go away quietly or have ice cream, whatever you guys want. Pie. I had a really good time. Oh, someone asked me about banking, right? The banks, financially, right? I talk a lot about the macroeconomic situation in the country. It's just one politician's opinion, right? I'm not as smart as anyone in banking here? Okay, so after I speak, go to them and they'll correct everything I'm about to say. Look, overall banking in New Hampshire is very strong. And I say that when we've done a good dive into certain ratios, certain fundamentals, certain metrics you want to see within the banking system and in the individual banks, whether it's the depositor ratio, whether it's their liquidity, all of this stuff. It's not like what you're seeing with some of these really big guys, the SVB issue, and ultimately what I think will translate into a big bank issue in Washington, in New York fairly soon, and we can talk about why that is. But our banks are pretty strong. Now, our banks will stay strong as still rely on a larger macro banking system of the United States. And that really is making sure the big banks, and sometimes our banks, will borrow from the big banks at a certain rate. That's often driven, not directly related to, but driven by what's going on with inflation and the Fed rate, to then relend out to whoever. Someone wants to build a house or someone wants to invest in a business. So when those rates become really high in New York for these big banks, it becomes very difficult for our banks to then borrow. They don't want to borrow at these exorbitant rates. So when the Fed starts jacking up rates, which they unfortunately have to do because they did not manage the inflation crisis early enough on. That's the big problem one of the many big problems of of the Biden administration. But they really ignored what was clearly coming down the path in terms of inflation. Rates are going up. They're going to unfortunately continue to go up, which limits the ability of our banks to lean into the system and create more opportunity here. So what happens? So things will tend to freeze up a little bit, right? We're going to be fundamentally stronger than most any other place in the country. There's no doubt about that. So we're always going to be a little bit ahead of the tide, I believe, as long as I'm governor. But no, I'm kidding. Well, no, I'm serious. We're always going to be a little bit ahead of the tide because we are very pro-business here and we want to make sure there's opportunity. But I think what you saw with SVB, I won't go into the wonkiness of why that happened. They did not I'll just say quickly, they did not manage their investments very well. They got themselves into a very horrible liquidity situation. You had a bunch of tech CEOs and CFOs tweeting at each other, holy cow, did you see what they're about to do? They need to raise $2 billion really fast. I better get my money out. That went viral, like in a matter of less than 24 hours, and all of a sudden there's a run on what the second largest bank failure now in the United States. They're SVB, well, we don't know them too well. They are the tech bank, right? They've backed up all these tech funds, and you have all these venture capitalists that are now they're directly getting bailed out by the federal government. I have a real problem with a lot of that. Bailouts are bad, right? It is your money. It is taxpayer dollars going to bail out these guys. It's a tough situation, but again, I'm a free market guy. We've created so much regulation in this area. We effectively told the banks to go borrow into treasuries because they're safe. A treasury's safe. You're going to get your return, right? And that's super safe. There's no risk. That's what the government told these banks. So they went and bought these 10-year treasuries. But then the value of them drop. They need cash very quickly, and now they're selling all those at a massive loss. So sure, there's no risk in a treasury if you wait 10 years, if you buy your bond and you sell it 10 years down the road. But there's durational risk, and nobody took that into account. These are supposed to be some of the smartest financial people in the country, and they acted like fools. And they didn't manage that. When they saw that coming, they didn't make other adjustments to do that. And so, yeah, they made some really bad decisions. Roku had $500 million in SVB in one bank. If you have $500 million, don't put it in one bank. I hope that's not a shocking news to you, but apparently it is to some of these giant companies out there. You have to hedge your risk, you have to spread things out. So there are a lot of things that will come to bear, but the whole bailout thing gets me nervous. So why am I talking about this? I don't think there's a massive systemic issue with bank runs right now. I think what the big banking issue that is going to come and really freeze this company up is commercial real estate. It's the next thing coming. No one's really talking about it. We've had one or two very over $1 billion+ foreclosures on commercial real estate. These giant office buildings in New York and in Dallas and Boston and all these big cities, and we have remote workers. So just do the math. If 20%, and it's a lot more than that, leave that office building, work remotely, still work for the company but never come back, that company is saying, I don't need 100,000 square feet or 50,000 square feet anymore. I need 10,000 square feet. They renegotiate their lease and you have massive vacancies. So the landlord no longer is bringing in the rent, and all of a sudden they were just starting these defaults. Why is this happening now? Because a lot of these buildings or repurchased or refinanced right after the, kind of in the 10, 11, 12, 2013 timeframe coming out of the economic crisis of 08, 09. And so these loans that, in one case, I think it was a 10-year loan with a big balloon payment that was coming to bear at year 10. And they said, we ain't paying it. We can't pay it. They defaulted on $2 billion. That was one company, one loan. I'm a little nervous that we could, and folks are looking at it now, how big of a problem is this going to be? If this one big company, had this one default, if you start adding these up, you could have tens of billions of dollars in defaulted loans. That's a problem, right? And again, it's not New Hampshire's problem, but it creates a banking problem in New York and in a more larger national fiscal problem that then, affects us kind of down the line. So I don't mean to get overly wonky. I probably said half of what I said will probably be corrected by someone a lot smarter than me. I'm not super smart on this stuff. I'm just smarter than most politicians. The bar is set really low. But I focus on it for this reason. I'm trying not to just, we tend to, as politicians, there's a habit of my peers to look at what's in the next 6 months. I'm worried about the next 6 and 16 years, right? As a business, that's kind of the business mentality I try to bring into the equation. And look at some of these bigger macroeconomics so we don't get shocked by it, so we can start talking about it, hedging ourselves, allowing businesses to make better decisions, whether it's where they put their money, what might happen within certain industries. And then we can, again, are creating opportunity. Not solving your problem, not just coming and making it all better, but creating the opportunity so that you can hedge your risk and be successful for you and your employees. Okay, that's way too much. I'm sorry. I hope that was informative or boring. But questions? Tim, I'll let you just...
Questions from the audience, anyone?
Sorry.
If not, I'll jump in there.
That's it, no questions. Really? You got me up here. I'll answer whatever you want. You'll wake up at 1 in the morning going, I should have asked that guy. I had him right there. Why didn't I just stick it to him? Anything.
I've got it.
All right.
First of all, I want to thank you for your focus on housing.
Yep.
So I'm going to be that person, but I've been licensed in real estate for 27 years.
Yeah.
So I understand the national portion of the licensing. I get that part. But every state has different rules.
Yes.
Right?
Perfect.
So you do need to be licensed in that, and I know as a realtor for this long, we had to fight to get licensing for home inspectors.
Right.
Because we had drywallers and framers claiming to be inspectors that were killing transactions or passing things that shouldn't have been passed because they didn't know what they were doing.
Sure.
So we fought for certain licensing. I understand a therapist that might learn how to help people with ADHD could do that in Massachusetts or here without needing to change a license. When it comes to real estate, we have specific rules to this state. I can't imagine you want to take that away and have anybody handle your $500,000, your $500,000, your $1 million property that has no experience, no knowledge, no licensing.
Right. So a couple of things. So you're absolutely right. The whole point in changing the licensing is then to spur some of these rule changes. Because again, some of these rule changes are very protectionist. If someone isn't doing, again, I'm more of a free market individual. If someone isn't doing a good job, then their business is going to suffer, especially in this day and age, right? If a business doesn't do a good job, holy cow, does everybody know it? So there is the opportunity for the best and the brightest to come up. But especially in real estate, is it a real estate license, real estate appraisers board?
Real estate, I'm a broker. Well,
So it's a real estate broker's license, right? We have so many different real estate licenses within it. So no, it isn't, and again, we want as many people to participate in all that, and we don't want people to not follow rules. The result is, yes, we would have to change some of our state rules, and I think that's actually a good thing, because Massachusetts rules, why does every state, in New England especially, look, you're in Oklahoma, it doesn't really matter what other states do, per se, but we're in New England. I mean, in a theoretical world, most states in New England should have almost all their licensing lined up, because so many people practice or all our communities are so interconnected across the border, as opposed to 6 different fiefdoms that all within like 45 minutes of one another. It creates a lot of hassle and a lot of mess. So we would want to change some of the rules to either align to other states or to align to the national standards, which are pretty even keeled. And on the real estate appraisers, you don't want a bad appraiser there. But again, have a national. That's one of the areas where I think you just have a simple, very clear national license that everyone kind of adheres to and allows that cross-border participation.
just to add on to that, did comment that half of Massachusetts has moved up here. There's a reason.
Yeah. Sorry, yeah.
Herb Carpenter of Fellowship Housing here in Concord.
Oh, yeah.
We house individuals living with severe and persistent mental illness. You mentioned a bed availability and that maybe we have enough beds, and yet staffing or some of those licenses were an issue. So it looks like we're going to get more beds, maybe with a Solution Health, from what I'm reading, and mental health beds. But you recently called on the hospitals to add mental health beds to their units.
Sure.
Wondered if you could...
Yeah, sure. Yeah, so let's back up. So just to address a couple things, you talked about the Solution Health. The state came up with an idea to give a $15 million grant to anyone that would build a mental health hospital. We almost got one on the Seacoast. They end up backing out. But Solutions, which is really Elliott and Nashua, looks like they're taking us up on it. It's great. We've cut the contract. We haven't signed it. It has to go through the council like literally this month. We're going to put $15 million in, and it allows more Medicaid beds, more beds to come up in kind of a state-of-the-art facility in kind of the central New Hampshire area. Huge opportunity, which is great, and we love that they're partnering with us. I'm going to take us aback because I'm very passionate about this mental health issue, and I'm very upset with the hospitals. Mental health is a community issue. There is no one that can say, I'm not going to be part of a mental health solution. And early on, I brought all the stakeholders in. It was the area agencies, it was the hospitals, it was the advocates, it was the nonprofits. I said, guys, give me any ideas you have. And we made fundamental changes. We created a 10-year mental health plan, of which in the first 3 years, we got almost the whole thing done. Right? We put it on steroids. We speed drove it as fast as we could, to the point where I have to literally rewrite the 10-year mental health plan. It wasn't written by bureaucrats, it was written by stakeholders and families. It was awesome. It was participatory. We got rates increased for a lot of those providers. We offered $200,000 per bed to anybody in the state that would build a bed in their community, as opposed to just having one central New Hampshire hospital institution, right? And because they all said, this is what we need, Governor, then if you want us to help with mental health, we want it, but you need to provide money for what we call the DRF beds. Great. $200,000 per bed, anyone can take us up on it. No one took us up on it. They all went, oh, I thought you were going to do it. No, I thought you were going to do it. You were going to do it. So now we get to, so that was frustrating. So now we get to hospitals, where, again, the wait list, you used to have almost 100 people waiting for a mental health bed, waiting in emergency rooms. The average wait time was almost 3 weeks, right? At one point, just before the pandemic, we got that down to 0. My administration got it to literally nobody waiting in an emergency room for a bed. Then we created a system where folks would, if you're IEA'd, which means, it's an involuntary admission, sometimes you'd wait days and days for that process to happen. We said, no way. We created funding for lawyers that sole job is to work with the IEA process so an individual has due process. They weren't really given that in a timely way before. We have judges now that sole job is to process mental health. So on that part of the system was failing. Now we can actually go. We have these emergency teams, again, so less people are going to the emergency rooms, more people can call that phone number and get help in their communities, at their homes, whatever it might be. So then the hospitals are always part of these conversations, and they say they want to be part of the solution, want to be part of the process. So what happens? They have a lack of staff. The average hospital right now has 30% vacancy. They can't even staff their own beds. Why is there such a large wait? Not for mental health, but just you're having a heart attack, right? You're having you need an X-ray, whatever it is. They literally are so understaffed in the hospitals. They have a 30% vacancy, just like New Hampshire Hospital. New Hampshire Hospital has a huge vacancy, so we have the physical beds, but the rooms can't be filled because it's hard to find. And I don't know anybody in the mental health world that can find enough staff, right? We all have that. So we bring everybody together again. What can we do to challenge this issue? Oh, we're going to create more nurses and more staff out of UNH. Great, I do that. So they give us ideas and we go. And then up and out of nowhere, the hospitals say, oh, and by the way, we're suing you because we don't want these patients anymore. When we sign the paper that say they have a mental health issue, you have to come pick them up right away and just get them out of our hands and bring them to the institution. Bring them to Concord. That is not a community partner. Mental health is a health issue. I don't expect every mental health issue to be solved in the emergency rooms. But do not tell me you're a hospital in the state and you're not going to be a part of this solution. I don't accept it. So I said, okay, you wanted money, I offered you money, you realized, I kind of called your bluff, if you will, and you didn't take the money to build beds in your communities. So I'm changing one word in the law. It doesn't say hospitals may have DRF beds, it says hospitals shall have DRF beds. Because a lot of families, that's just where they go. They go to the hospital in the middle of the night. And for a hospital to say, I'm going to sign the papers, call the state, and get you out of my emergency room, and that's exactly what they're saying, no exaggeration. That's not fair to that family. That's not a community solution. That's not a partnership solution. If the state had been here doing nothing on this issue, washing our hands of mental health, saying, I don't know, you guys figure it out. No way. We have dived into this issue, dove into this issue, more than any administration in history, taking it head on. I'll take the good and the bad. Tell me where it's not working. I'm an open book. But when we have a problem, do not come to me with lawyers. Do not come to me with lawyers. Because what you're saying is, sue first and ask questions later. And that's exactly what they said. Mental health isn't our problem. No. Sorry. So I'm changing, and all I did is I said, we're going to make it shall. You shall have some beds. And for the smaller hospitals, you can have 1 or 2 beds. And what it really means is this: hospitals have to hire 1 or 2 psychiatrists or partner with the ARA agency and have a contract so they'll provide the staffing in the cases that you have need an emergency service. And maybe you have to maintain that individual till we can get them into the New Hampshire hospital bed. And again, we're working hard on recruiting and creating more staff. We're working hard at it. We have more young people coming in finally. But I do not accept community-driven issues where one of the most important aspects of our community, our hospitals, say we're not going to play anymore. We're not going to participate in your solution. I don't get mad at much. I'm a pretty positive guy. But after 6 years of this nonsense, I'm calling bullshit on the hospitals. I really am. And not for me, for all the families that you are there to provide support to. Does a firefighter show up at a house, at someone overdosing and saying, look, I'm here to put out fires. I'm not here to save I'm not here to save drug addicts. No. Firefighters jump right in. Do cops show up when someone is having a mental health breakdown and say, look, there's no crime being committed. My job isn't to deal with your mental health issue in your community. No, they jump right in. I mean, it's amazing what we ask. Do teachers say, look, I'm here to teach ABCs. I'm not here to help these kids with their mental health struggles? No, they dive right in. I know that's not what they went to teaching for or what they went to the police academy for, but it is a community solution. It's all hands on deck. It's not a perfect solution, but everyone takes that responsibility, right, for being a positive impact around the mental health crisis that this country, not just the state, this country is facing. And hospitals came with their lawyers. No way, man. I'm going to fight you tooth and nail. I'm not going to accept it. I don't think anybody should accept it. And let me also be fair here. It's not all hospitals. There's one hospital association that is primarily run by Dartmouth and Catholic Medical and Elliott and some of the others. And I'm just going to put the blame right there because they call the shots. I've had smaller critical access hospitals, especially in rural areas, say, God, we don't want any part of this. We don't want part of this lawsuit. We are not part. We told them don't do it, but we really don't have a say within the hospital association. It's driven by a couple of the big ones. And I can't say exactly who's driving the whole lawsuit thing. I have my suspicions, but I'll tell you, it's not fair for me to call out all hospitals, but I've told them, break off from the association. They have a big hospital association and a critical access hospital association, because what smaller, more critical access hospitals go through is much different than some of these bigger hospitals, right? And they get different funding and everything's different. So I said, break away, but they refused to do it. So, okay, you're going to sue me as a whole, then I'm going to come back to you as a whole. Everyone has to participate. I don't know where it'll end up, but I think everyone needs to take notice that it is a community-driven problem. It isn't a Concord problem. It isn't a social worker problem. It isn't a hospital problem. It is a community problem. And who doesn't know somebody with some mental health needs? A child, a neighbor, someone in school, whatever. Boy, this is going crazy. It's going viral. So to have anyone within the community to say they don't want to participate. Can I get a fun question? I mean, that's a real serious issue, and I never get too negative, but man, you got me.
Time for one more.
I'm going to actually eat that piece of pie on my table. Yeah, hey, how are you?
One question.
Anything. I'm just kidding. You ask me anything.
Are you running for president?
Yes, I'm the president of my condo board. Needs a fundamental change, and I'm here to announce I'm ready to take on the challenge. No, I don't know. Look, I'm having a ball. People are asking me to be on a lot of media. I say yes, sure, why not? I don't ask to go on any media. They ask me, and they go to very big lengths to actually get me on their shows. I tend to be a little more positive than most. I don't believe in yelling at people for the most part, right? I think I'm trying to get my party bigger on the Republican side. I think we've kind of ticked off some independents. We've disenfranchised some young voters. So I love trying to get them back on the team. I think as Republicans and conservatives, I think we've got a great product. I think we're just terrible at selling it. We're horrible messengers. Republicans are terrible at messaging. So I'm trying to bring that aspect to it, and it's garnering a lot of national attention. And most importantly, I get to go national and brag about our system. And I cannot tell you, I was at a conference in Georgia, AEI, it's a kind of big think tank, really, really smart people. And they kept saying, we're pretty smart here, Governor, but how do you do it? You have no income tax, you have no sales tax. How does this state run? Like, how does it work? And I get to brag about the fundamentals of our system and why it's so participatory and the benefits of doing that and why it can translate, not just nationally, but in other states. So I'm having a ball, and if it blows up into something bigger, great. But I'm not going to get into a presidential race just to get into a race. It's because people love this live free or die thing. They're getting excited about this model in 49 other states, and they say, yeah, that's exactly what we want. Results-driven individuals and leadership that can work with Republicans and Democrats, because you have to work with both. I mean, you are never going to balance a budget. You're never going to solve any of the issues around Social Security, Medicare, or immigration reform. You're not going to solve any of that by just having a Republican bill or a Democrat bill. You need basically 60 votes in the Senate to pass anything significant, right? So I told the Republicans, they said, well, we need 60 votes to balance the budget. It'll never happen. I said, well, your plan only is a Republican plan. So why don't you create the 60-vote plan, right? Find 10 Democrats that are that believe in this. Maybe they want something in return. Give a little, get a lot, negotiate. But man, there's just a sense in D.C. that nothing can get done unless it's one-sided. But I'm telling you, if it's one-sided, nothing will get done. So I don't know. I'm having a ball. We're just doing it. We get to brag about how awesome New Hampshire is. More people are looking in our direction. We're just out selling the product. We'll see where it leads. But you can let me know in a couple months if you think I should jump in or not. I'll probably make a decision. I have to make some sort of, the press keeps asking and all that, so I'll make some sort of firm decision sometime in the summer. I would love to debate. I would love to get on a debate stage with Donald Trump and DeSantis and the whole gang. They're friends. Nikki Haley and Mike Pence, these are all great friends of mine. They are. But we disagree on certain points. We agree on a lot, but disagree on a little bit. They all tend to yell too much for me. No one gets inspired by getting yelled at. And all I see is them yelling and negative, right? That doesn't get people on your team. So I try to bring a more positive, solutions-driven approach. Maybe it's electable, maybe it's not, but either way, it's the right idea, and we can at least, I think, have a little New Hampshire edge to the conversation, which I think is pretty cool. What else you got?
I think that wraps us up.
Oh, does? Okay.
Thank you so much.
Great. Oh, no, great. I'll come talk to you.